All right, let's talk about the Colts offense for a second. I find it a very fascinating situation. A lot of people were kind of blaming the Colts for abandoning the run early on against Tampa Bay. Kind of said, hey, why didn't you run the ball more with Jonathan Taylor, your MVP candidate, which, that was a legitimate conversation a week ago. What's going on? I think there's very real reasons, and I actually think it's probably the correct decision that they made. I'm going to say that I think Frank Reich, I would have done the same thing Frank Reich would have done. I'll say it that way. So let's sort of get into the film study and talk about just why he got away from the run and then eventually found it again later on in the game. So let's start things off with this play. So this is early on what was not working for the Colts offense. The running game just was not really having any success. And so, again, that's why they weren't using it. What's going to happen on this play is it's actually kind of an interesting concept where you're going to have your center and your tackle on this play both go out to block Lavonte David. You then have a tight end who's blocking Jason Pierre-Paul on the edge, and you have your left guard who's going to be blocking William Goldston, number 92 for Tampa Bay. Obviously, we all know the Colts. The left guard, Quentin Nelson, is no ordinary left guard, although given the injuries, he kind of has, he hasn't been typical Quentin Nelson. He hasn't been what we've grown to expect from Quentin Nelson. I think that's fair to say, because really watch that matchup. Watch the guard against William Goldston. Look, Goldston's kind of just going to, stop him in his tracks right there and gets a little bit over to the, the right of the screen, right? Because again, Vita Vea unblocked at the line. I think the logic is we have we're leaving a nose tackle unblocked because we can run by him. But Vita Vea, despite his big size, can certainly move. And at this point, Taylor can't really get to the edge right there because if he tries to bounce all the way to the outside, Pierre-Paul is there. And if he tries to get in between, Pierre-Paul and William Goldston is there. And if he cuts one earlier, Vita Vea is there. So congratulations, you got Lavonte David out of the play, but it doesn't really matter because the defensive line has done their part. Look, Taylor's going to get maybe a yard or two, but there wasn't much there. And that's kind of the issue with the running game and why the running game wasn't working early on is just, it's hard to run the football against Tampa Bay. They have a really good run defense, and they have so many guys who can hurt you. Like William Goldston, he's a guy who probably plenty of people watching this video haven't even heard of, but he's a really valuable piece to this team. He's a hard guy to game plan around, and you have like 7 of them. He's not even like a top 5 run defender on their team. That's how stacked they are when it comes to stopping the run. And so when you do something like this, which, what they're going to try to do here is you see the blocking concept on the screen. It's a lot of one-on-one matchups. The couple of key matchups to watch on this one is going to be you have a right guard this time who's going to, again, be blocking Goldston. Goldston had a good day in this one. You also are going to have Quentin Nelson try to run around and block Vita Vea, and it's just going to be hard for him to get there, basically. Watch Vita Vea just sidestep him because, again, Vea could move. I'm telling you, he's not just a bowling ball. He's someone who can move around, and so Nelson just isn't really able to make that block the way he wanted to. Meanwhile, I've also circled Goldston. He's doing a great job as well of moving the line of scrimmage back and winning his own one-on-one matchups. So this is kind of the issue is typically for Indianapolis, they have a lot of offensive linemen who just consistently win their one-on-one matchups. But against Tampa Bay, it's just difficult to do that when they just have so many guys. Taylor has nowhere to go. He gets stopped in his tracks, actually loses yardage on that play. So the idea behind why aren't you running the ball more, well, it just wasn't working early on. That's really what it came down to, is this was a difficult thing to do. It wasn't working. And the flip side is the passing game was absolutely working. Something like this, where what's going to end up happening on this play is it's something that they were doing pretty consistently. You have zone coverage. That's what Tampa Bay is in. Because, again, Tampa Bay is at least respecting the running game, so use that to your advantage and throw over the top. Typically, what you do to run the football is you're running the football to set up the pass. Well, when Tampa Bay is letting you pass on them, well, just keep passing on them. That's what typical football is. That's typically what you would do. What's going to happen is it's a cover 3 zone that Tampa Bay is in, and they have, for Indianapolis, you're going to have a receiver run a deep route, trying to push the safety further back, and you have a tight end run over the middle. And they were living over the middle. They kept getting these plays over the middle, and so that's what they're going to, that's what Antoine Winfield, the free safety on this play, is expecting to happen here. Watch. So Wentz takes the snap. He runs a play action. Winfield starts to move in a little bit. And the second he does this, obviously Indianapolis was doing a pretty good job getting those over the middle stuff. But now, because Winfield steps in a little bit, you have something even further deep that could be open. As you see, Wentz is going to make a good throw. You're going to get a big completion right here. So a big part of why you keep doing this is, well, just the offense was working and the offense was rolling. There's a couple of turnovers, but you kind of expect the turnovers are a bit fluky, and they happen from time to time. So running the football more doesn't mean that you're not going to turn the ball over more. If the passing game is getting the ball down the field, you should keep doing it. It just didn't work out, I think. Now, what happened later on is the running game did start to work. Jonathan Taylor got a good chunk of his yardage totals on that final drive. Taylor ended up with 83 total yards in this game. 58 of those were on one drive, the final drive, or I guess technically the second final drive, because there was a drive where they threw 2 passes and did not get anything going, but, their final real drive. Well, this is how they were able to run the ball effectively. It honestly, you could say, well, Tampa Bay wasn't stopping the run as much, and to some degree that is true. They were playing, a little bit more 2 safety deep coverages. Usually they would still show 1 safety deep, but on this play, they're having a safety drop back in the coverage. But really a big part of it is, I think maybe just the defensive line was tired and they were able to finally start winning the one-on-one matchups the way they typically do. Watch, you're going to see they actually clear out a pretty good running lane there. Vita Vea still almost came in and made the play, but you're able to actually gain some yards that way. And that's kind of why they were able to get stuff going later on. It was a little bit of Tampa Bay, but it was mostly just they started executing better. So that's where I think it gets a little bit interesting, and maybe you can make the argument they should have ran the ball more, but I don't know. I think I totally understood the logic, and I was agreeing with the logic when the Colts were doing it. So yeah, that's kind of how I think about it. You could definitely make an argument that, okay, they turned the ball over a lot when they were throwing the football. You are more likely to throw the football, or more likely to turn the ball over when you're throwing the football than when you're running the football, so maybe that's why they shouldn't have thrown the football as much. But I just don't know. When you're moving the ball that effectively through the air, I just think you stick with it. I really can't criticize them too much for it. I also think it's a very important thing to mention that, yes, there was a string of good runs going by Jonathan Taylor in that final drive, but, part of it too was probably Tampa Bay maybe was expecting more passing because you had thrown the ball so much. And I also think it's worth mentioning, just with the whole running versus passing thing, you're not typically going to get a 60-yard touchdown run, right? They got a 60-yard touchdown pass. Now, they might. Jonathan Taylor has done those before, but it's very rare that happens. It's certainly very rare it'll happen against a team like Tampa Bay, and it almost never happens multiple times a game, whereas you can do that multiple times a game through the passing game. So just the upside of a good passing play is almost always greater than the upside of a good rushing play. But, the downside can be worse to passing. So fascinating situation. I do think reasonable minds can differ about this, but I would go with, I think Frank Reich made the right call and it didn't work out. That's what happens sometimes in the NFL. That's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.